All right. Hey guys, this is Stephen Romo in the ABC 13 newsroom, where we understand there is a verdict in the capital murder trial of Ronald Haskell Jr. He is accused in the killing of the Stay family back in 2014. As you can remember, the family, the survivor at the time, 15-year-old, now 20-year-old Cassidy Stay, actually took the stand earlier this week in the trial. And we also heard a summary of the events yesterday from in the closing arguments of this case in the brutal murder. The entire time, the family members there watching the suspect here, Ronald Haskell, in court. We heard in the closing arguments the defense team's plea for the jury to find him not guilty by reason of insanity. They listed a number of experts they said could testify to his insanity at the time. Meanwhile, prosecutors said that he was in his right mind at the time. They gave several examples that they said proved that he knew what he was doing that day back in 2014 when he took the life of Cassidy Stay's parents and siblings. They didn't deny that he pulled the trigger. The defense team, they said that he was hearing voices and having hallucinations at the time. Prosecutors, meanwhile, pointed out that the hostage negotiation team that we heard from said that Haskell told them that he didn't want to go to jail. Prosecutors saying that proved that he knew right from wrong. This is video of that crime scene back in 2014. In the closing arguments yesterday, we heard a summary of the events on that day. Haskell wore a delivery uniform to get access into the Stay's home. Then he was cornered by police after committing those killings and spoke with hostage negotiators for quite some time in a cul-de-sac of the neighborhood of his ex-wife's brother, while negotiation teams worked to get him out of there. Cassidy was being treated for her injuries. She was shot in the head, but managed to survive and go on to face down the man who admittedly killed her family in court each and every day. I'll show you right now. We have, this is a live picture inside the courtroom right now. We're waiting for the judge to emerge from this door, and then we will hear the verdict in this case. It is a capital murder case, meaning that if he is found guilty, he could face the death penalty. And the other options for the jury to look at are not guilty and not guilty by reason of insanity. The defense team not even really trying to appeal to the jury for them to decide that he's not guilty. They are instead asking that he be found not guilty by reason of insanity, mentioning several experts. It was an emotional time hearing from the closing arguments from both sides. We saw Cassidy and her family members there, along with Haskell's ex-wife, Melanie. It's feeling quite emotional. Crime scene photos were shown again yesterday of what exactly happened, something that Cassidy, of course, lived through and remembers quite well. Haskell, during much of the time, didn't seem to be looking at the attorneys as they were talking, but either his defense attorneys or the prosecutors. He seemed to be looking down and not really reacting at all when they were giving the closing arguments in this case. Meanwhile, Cassidy and her family members were reacting quite regularly as the prosecutors held up crime scene photos, again in this case showing the way Haskell is accused of lining up Cassidy along with her parents and her siblings, counting them to make sure all 7 were present before shooting them and killing them. Prosecutors also laid out the multi-step plan that Haskell is accused of going on in this situation. He drove first out of state in California to retrieve a weapon before making his way down to Spring, where he then is accused of dressing as a delivery driver and going up to the stay home, speaking with Cassidy actually, and finding out when her parents would be home. He's then accused of going to his vehicle, retrieving his weapon, and coming back to the home where he made entry and waited for the stay parents to return. He's then accused of taking Cassidy's cell phone and demanding her cell phone password from her, and as he waited for her parents to come home, then lining them up and taking their lives. Miraculously, she was able to survive, partially due to deflecting that bullet with her hand. It just lodged the bullet off path enough that it was not a fatal shot. It's just her incredible strength that she has to first survive that and then come back to court each and every day and face her family's accused killer. Again, we're waiting for the judge to come in, invite the jury in, and then we'll bring that verdict to you live. On the left side of your screen is crime scene video from back in 2014 when this happened. On the right side of your screen is that door we're waiting to see the judge emerge from. It's been a long time coming in this trial and a long drawn out process for this family as they've continued to show up for this, and they are in court right now. Of course, we hope to hear from them as well as prosecutors and defense attorneys once we know what this verdict is. It should be coming any moment now as we wait inside the courtroom. And we continue to wait for the verdict in the capital murder trial of Ronald Haskell Jr., accused of killing the Stay family back in 2014. On the right side of your screen here is the door where the judge and jury will eventually emerge and announce that verdict in the case. We also, on our website, we have a complete timeline on the left side of your screen here, dating back all the way to 2014, in July of 2014, when this murder happened. You can click through that now. It takes you all the way back to our coverage from the very beginning of this case. It's difficult at times to read, but important to see what exactly Cassidy is remembering and facing down when she sees her former uncle in that courtroom and what he's accused of. And as we continue to wait for that verdict, here on the left side of your screen, some video of Ronald Haskell Jr. As he sat in court. This is the view the Stay family had from basically just the back of his head throughout this ordeal. It seemed that he made almost no eye contact with anyone behind him in the courtroom. And just a bit of a reminder of what happened in closing arguments yesterday. The defense team not really even denying that Haskell pulled the trigger, but they were emphasizing that he did not know right from wrong at the time. They were saying that he was hearing voices and had a variety of mental illnesses. They pointed to claims that he was suffering from severe depression and bipolar 1, something prosecutors were denying, instead saying their experts said that instead Haskell was just suffering from a narcissistic personality disorder, and saying that he did know right from wrong at the time. Those prosecutors pointed out the complex multi-step plan Haskell had to complete in order to make it all the way into the Stays home. They also pointed out that he told arresting officers that he did not want to go to jail. That was proof, according to the state at least, that he did know right from wrong at the time. The jury heard a summary of Cassidy Stay's just heartbreaking testimony as she heard and saw her family members killed in front of her back when she was just 15 years old in 2014. The jury also heard claims from some of Haskell's family members that he had had disturbances in his mental health dating back to childhood, saying that he had anger problems and hallucinations. It's up to the jury now if they believe those claims and believe that they would inhibit his ability to know the difference between right and wrong in this case. You see a bailiff here on your screen now, and a prosecutor there getting ready for this verdict. The jury began deliberating around 3 p.m. yesterday. After about 3 hours of deliberation, they were sequestered overnight. Here we can see on the right side of your screen there is Cassidy Stay, waiting to hear the verdict in this case. She's been surrounded by her family members throughout this ordeal. Ronald Haskell's ex-wife, Melanie, testified earlier in this case. We saw her brother in the courtroom yesterday. That's the neighborhood where Ronald Haskell was eventually and first encountered by police before the hostage negotiators were eventually able to get him into custody. Cassidy Stay, another reminder yesterday we had of just how strong this young woman is to face down the man who his defense team admits pulled the trigger and killed her family, shot her in the head. She's come back to court every day and faced him down bravely. Just incredible strength to be able to survive that and to continue through testifying and showing up to this trial for the man, her former uncle, who took the life of her parents and her siblings and shot her herself. Just incredible strength from this young woman. And we'll keep our view of the courtroom here on the left side of your screen. Meanwhile, on the right side of your screen, you can see the detailed timeline we have of the case here. It was reset 20 times before finally going to trial. This happened back in 2014, finally went to trial after years of waiting. And you can see the timeline of events, deputies responding to that Spring area home where Stephen and Katie Stay, along with their 4 children, were found dead. Cassidy injured, but amazingly survived. It was later that day when Ronald Haskell was finally taken into custody after a standoff situation while he was in his vehicle, telling officers allegedly that he did not want to go to jail. The timeline continues from there. Much of it talking about the support from the community that Cassidy received. She was named homecoming in the homecoming court of Klein Collins High School. Of course, a difficult situation for her as her parents and family members were not able to attend. That happened in October of 2014. And you see the time jump right here on the right side of your screen. From October 2014 to August 26th of 2019, this year, after literally years of delays, Ronald Haskell finally went to trial for killing his former sister-in-law and her family. It is just a heartbreaking to even imagine that as we go through that timeline of everything that this family has had to endure. In closing arguments yesterday, we heard from the prosecutors saying that this was all set off by Melanie, Ronald Haskell's ex-wife, divorcing him, saying prosecutors said he was that was just an attack on his ego and that made him want to go and take their lives, while the defense team, on the other hand, said that it may have been a trigger to set off a mental illness that they say disassociated him from knowing right from wrong. And we are about to find out if the jury believed what they heard, if they believed the prosecutors or the defense team. We'll find out in just a moment here as both sides gather in the courtroom to hear this verdict. And again, if you're just joining us, we're awaiting the verdict for Ronald Haskell Jr. in the capital murder trial. He's accused of killing the Stay family back in 2014. A case that has been going on for 5 years now. Just went to trial back in August of this year. On the left side of your screen is video from 2014 when the bodies of the Stay family were found in the home after Cassidy Stay was able to call authorities. You see him there in handcuffs when he's finally taken into custody, still wearing the delivery driver's shirt that prosecutors claim he used as a disguise to get into the Stay family home. Now on the left side of your screen, you can see the victims. That was Stephen and Katie Stay and 4 of their children who were killed execution style. The left side of your screen, you can see that's Cassidy Stay, the survivor, who's now 20 years old, was 15 years old at the time. Heartbreaking to see these pictures of these young children who were gunned down execution style. Prosecutors told the jury again how they were lined up, and prosecutors say that Haskell actually counted them out loud, 1 through 7, to make sure all of Stephen and Katie Stay's children were present, and he was going to kill them all. Just heartbreaking to hear that. Of course, Cassidy Stay had an emotional reaction to hearing that. Again, it's not theoretical to her. She was there at the time, so she was no doubt remembering what that was like on that day. She was just 15 years old. As we continue to wait for the verdict in this case to hear from the jury, yesterday was my first day in the courtroom listening to the closing arguments in this case, and of course following it along from ABC 13's coverage. I knew a lot of the details of what happened both back in 2014 and in this trial, which started last month in August. But actually being in the courtroom, I was able to just watch Cassidy and her family members, and what was most striking to me about the situation was just the strength of Cassidy's stay. And she sat and listened to what happened to her family, something that she witnessed herself back in 2014. Looks like we're having a little bit of an issue with that live picture. We'll get that up as soon as we know that that verdict is happening and get you back into the courtroom. Meanwhile, as I was saying, Cassidy Stay sitting in that courtroom, her former uncle just feet away from her, the prosecutors showing those crime scene photos of that day, again, not theoretical to her, but no doubt stirring memories of the day she lost both her parents and her siblings right next to her. She herself shot in the head, and still that did not deter her from showing up to the courtroom, hearing all of that discussion, seeing it all happen. There were times, of course, where she became very emotional and just moments later sat back straight up, stared ahead, took in everything that was going on, paying close attention to each and every detail. That was what struck me most, just being there in the courtroom and seeing the strength of this young woman, now 20 years old, just 15 years old when this happened. And now we're awaiting that verdict now from the jurors. And just a reminder, Haskell here has been waiting 5 years himself for this trial, has seen several psychiatric experts in the meantime, something that was brought up multiple times by his defense team, and really leaving it up to the jurors, as we have our live picture now back up on the screen, just up to the jurors if they believed that he didn't know the difference between right and wrong. Prosecutors alleging that he could have a narcissistic personality disorder, he could even have depression, but still know the difference between right and wrong. Meanwhile, the defense team was alleging that Haskell's they said severe mental illness was what was keeping him from hearing that. Now we're about to hear this verdict now. We'll take you into the courtroom. All right, back in the courtroom now, awaiting the verdict for Ronald Haskell Jr., accused of capital murder of the Stay family back in 2014. We'll be hearing that verdict any moment now. All right, and we're having a little bit of difficulty with our signal in the courtroom now, but as soon as it should be back up any second. Meanwhile, I'm also getting updates on the verdict here, and of course I will bring that to you just as soon as we get it. We're waiting to hear if Ronald Haskell Jr. is found guilty, not guilty, or not guilty of by reason of insanity. That's the three options the jury had to look at right now. We find out momentarily. Back in the courtroom now, waiting for that verdict.
Way to come in the door of the court.
Sorry guys, Deputy Sanchez here. Sir.
Good, how are you?
I'm well, sir.
Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
And Ronald Haskell Jr. has just entered the courtroom there, speaking to his attorney. He's facing away from the cameras he has throughout much of the trial. Looks quite a bit different than his arrest in the video we just showed you a moment ago. 5 years ago, of course, a lot can change. He's now clean shaven and wearing a suit at the moment of his arrest. He's wearing that delivery shirt.
Let the record reflect the counsel,
Let's listen
the
in.
state counsel for defense, the defendant are all in the courtroom, and we have received word that there's a verdict in this case. At this time, sir, you can bring the jury in.
All rise to the jury.
Thank you. You may be seated. Let the record reflect now that counsel for the state, counsel for defense, the defendant, and all members of the jury are present in the courtroom. Foreperson, have you reached a verdict in this case?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
And is it a unanimous verdict?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. If you would please present it to the bailiff. In cause number 1434395, State of Texas versus Ronald Lee Haskell, we, the jury, find the defendant, Ronald Lee Haskell, guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment. Signed by the foreperson. Would either side like a poll of the jury?
No, Judge.
Defense would request the jury be polled.
All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, counsel is entitled to have a poll of the jury to make sure that each one of you has expressed your own verdict in this unanimous vote. So I will call each one of you individually, starting with you, foreperson, working my way down, and then the second row in the same fashion just to determine if this is your vote. So, number 1, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Number 2?
Yes.
Number 3?
Yes, sir.
Number 4?
Yes.
Number 5?
Yes.
Number 6?
Yes, sir.
Number 7?
Yes.
Number 8? Who's- Number 8?
Oh, yes.
Number 9?
Yes.
Number 10?
Yes.
Number 11?
Yes.
And number 12?
Yes, Your Honor.
I do find that this is a unanimous verdict.
And you heard it there from the jury in this case. A unanimous decision of Ronald Haskell Jr. found guilty in the capital murder of the Stay family, Stephen and Katie Stay, back in 2014. On the right side of your screen, a live picture now of their daughter, Cassidy Stay, 15 years old at the time, now 20 years old. Now knows the man who killed her parents is found guilty in this capital murder case. Since it is a capital murder case, once the punishment phase is underway, Ronald Haskell Jr. could face the death penalty for these killings.
We receive counsel on both sides. If you would come up for just a moment.
We will keep this live stream up for you for a bit as you watch this emotional moment for Cassidy Stay and her family as they see the verdict in this trial, this situation that has gone on for the past 5 years.
Go to any addresses that you've heard about in this trial, or try to form any opinions based on anything outside of what you've heard in this room, all right? Please avoid the news, and we'll see you Monday at 9 o'clock. You may be seated. Sheriff's Office not having to provide transportation and not having to sequester